You are watching Access LaPorte County, Channel 97. Coming up next is the September 16th, 2024 meeting of the LaPorte County Council and Commissioners Workshop. You can find more information for this meeting by visiting www.accesslaportecounty.org.
We're starting the LaPorte County Workshop, and this is a joint workshop to discuss purchase order changes, procedures, and accuracy that is being implemented by the auditor's office. So we had some concerns, and I know we've talked about, we had a couple of executive sessions where we discussed some issues of accuracy that's happening in the auditor's office. And then just recently, I think one of the bigger concerns that we some of me on the commission had, was that when they changed this invoice purchase order to a new system, we just pretty much had somebody from the auditor's office just sent out a notice and selectively take certain departments and add them in and had them change the process. There was nothing, so there was no discussions with the department heads, there was no discussions with the commission or the council to let us know that this was going to be happening. It has created some chaos throughout LaPorte County government. I mean, there's definitely some cons and some pros to this, but if anyone else would like to have some input on this.
Sure, thank you, Madam President. You said we had some executive sessions. Could you expound on that, please?
Well, I think we can talk about that after we talk about these issues with the purchase orders.
Well, you had said, quote, we had executive sessions, end quote, and then went on to talk about that led us to here. So I'm curious what those executive sessions were.
Well, we had executive sessions about money missing. There were transfers made. Actually, there were 2 transfers made out of the auditor's office.
Is that in relation to this purchase order, what we're here for this workshop?
Well, we're here for the work. It actually says here, procedures and accuracy.
Okay. So I am curious who executive session means something, and I'm curious who was in the executive session.
The three commissioners and the 7 council people are attorneys.
Not in relation to these purchase orders. There wasn't an executive session. The last executive joint session I can remember us having was for personnel matters, and that was probably a couple months ago, if I remember correctly.
So again, it states it says purchase order changes, procedures, and accuracy that is being implemented.
Mr. Haney, I think there was an executive session having to do with purchase orders with the highway department, right? I mean, that we had that issue with Reeve Riley. I think that was an executive session. And I think everybody did attend that. That's the last one that I remember.
Yeah, that's the last one I remember too. That was well before there was any talk about doing these online.
I don't know.
Yes, I don't know about that having any, how that would be germane to the issues that we're having here this evening. But I just wanted to make sure there wasn't executive sessions that were being held that either I wasn't included in or that we weren't properly noticed, because that would be unfortunate if there were.
So would you agree that you were at these meetings that we had for the purchase order?
That has absolutely nothing to do with what's on that thing.
Again,
yes.
The states here, purchase
yes, I think
order
almost everybody in this room was here for that, but that was
procedures and accuracy.
That had nothing to do with purchase order changes at that executive session. I think we can all agree on.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're sticking apples to apples here and not confusing various issues. Thank you for joining us, Madam Deputy Auditor. I know both the auditor's office said they weren't going to be available here today before this meeting was scheduled, and it was scheduled anyway. Was going to ask why we were even here.
I'm working anyway, so I logged in.
Thank you for adjusting your schedule. We do appreciate that.
Are you done?
Why are we here?
So again, we had the auditor go up here and talk about the pros. And this was so that the State Board of Accounts could view invoices, purchase orders in the LAO system instead of pulling invoices, purchases from storage room. There were some people, and we asked Ms. Winsky to be here. The attorney, Guy DiMartino, you spoke with the State Board of Accounts. And one of the things is we do have to save the originals, correct?
So the advice that I had is that we have to follow a retention policy, and it's a very good idea to have a redundant system. So at least until a point in time that the retention policy is followed, that the invoices be held in paper, not necessarily that you would have to access them, but that you would be able to go ahead and pull them up if necessary. For instance, if there's a problem with the scan, or if they actually want to see the document or see the purchase order, we have the ability to go ahead and take and grab the paper for them, even though they can access it online. So they would like to see some redundancy. That was the information that I received. Mr. Rosenbaum?
Yeah, I'd like to add the following. I came up to the microphone simply because where we're sitting we don't have. I too have spoken to auditors. I've spoken to LAO. I have not had the pleasure of speaking to the State Board of Accounts because I knew it was being done. In an audit process, one of the processes is that when you're using a new system, they want to verify it. They want to verify it by going to paper copy. And accordingly, throwing things out after you scan them is inappropriate. Forgetting the retention policy, it needs to have that to get through the first audit, at least, minimally, so that the State Board of Accounts can see if everything is working. So the biggest statement that was made was about the ability to get rid of the invoices. And we need to know professionally, as an auditor, you do not do that.
There's nothing
that should be thrown away.
It's because you do not understand internal controls, you do not understand auditing, and I'm tired of
If you're talking to me, you might want to back that up a bit. That isn't true. What I said is nothing should be thrown away. I won't take your accusations today.
Who are the two people talking to me? Besides, who else?
There's one, isn't there? I'm Rhonda Grave.
That's it? Who else? It seems like there's an echo going on.
Well, if there's an echo, then that's probably one echo means one person echo.
Okay.
So I talked to that issue too. Typically, myself having been involved in audits and defending folks, auditors tick and tie things. They look at things on ledgers and then they go ahead and they tie it to a specific invoice. So at least until the procedure is going forward, I would recommend that you keep the paper documents as backup to make sure that we have good controls, we have good backups of the electronic data at that point in time. It's just good accounting sense.
We have studied the retention record.
You're gonna
And what it does is
Rhonda, you're gonna have to.
original, and you can read this for yourself on IN.gov/IARA. So the accounts payable aren't receiving paper copies. So that is the original for that. But all departments should always keep copies based on their department policy And the IRA policy, which again you can find online.
Rhonda, it's very difficult to hear you because wherever you're at, you're either too close to the mic and we're getting feedback, so we're not understanding anything you say.
Okay, I'm not sure how to fix that. I've got my microphone on here on the computer. You are muted.
We can take a 5-minute recess and she can come over.
Yeah, if you,
I'm working, I'm sorry.
Well, then
No, I'm not coming over.
just mute it.
just mute her then.
No.
He did mute me. Now it's going 60 times.
Okay,
Having a
so,
flashback.
So this is not necessarily regarding records retention policy. This is regarding good accounting principles and redundancy. Not to say that the records can't be destroyed according to the state's record retention policy at some point in time. Just until this procedure gets going and you get through a few cycles and at least the first audit to make sure that all the fixes are there, then at that point in time you can revisit that. So I'm just saying that it's really not a good practice to get rid of the originals until such time as you've gone through the audit and it works okay and you've worked out the kinks and bugs.
so again, who would retain those records? And my concern is that, we've had some changeover in departments. When the department heads weren't notified, it's not every department head who does the invoices. Sometimes it's their employees. Who becomes responsible for the record keeping? Who do we figure out? Who do we figure out who's going to be responsible for that?
We figure that out. The commission would need to appoint it. You know, that would be part of the commission's job because you're the executive of the county. As to the records retention policy, who's going to maintain them, whether it's going to be in the individual records or whether it's going to go to another office.
So instead of sending it to the auditor's office, because they kind of kicked it out of their office, and they're asking every single department, whoever the person is that takes care of the purchase orders, they're asking them to retain this information. So now we're going to add another duty to the commission assistant because now she's going to have to collect all the originals for everybody and make sure that we have that in our office, because
I don't know that the commission actually has to
gather them.
gather the records. I think you just establish the policy, whether it's the department head in this specific department, but then you actually should have some type of policy along those lines so everybody knows, you know, a proper nomenclature of how they're going to file it. So if you go to look for it, you know where it is, because, you know, trying to find things 4 or 5 years down the road is a little difficult. Mr. Kronka?
If I may. And is the mic working? For those in the back? All right. So looking at it, there's been a lot of turmoil just by the fact it was rolled out, you know, came unilaterally, if you will. And auditors have, you know, some pretty hefty say-so in what we do. However, you got a huge breadth of people that are affected by this. What I would do is go back to where we were 2 months ago, however long ago it was that we first spoke in the commissioner's office. Go back to that process with the intent of a small group from the auditor's office and maybe 1 or 2 department heads or their appointees, you know, their designees, whether it be their seconds or whatnot, work together to take what is defined as a problem, try to solve that problem, right? And right now it's even kind of confusing as to what problem we're trying to solve. Whether it comes down to the output from the audit from 2020, or if it's something that we're trying to improve the process in the auditor's office, I'm still at a loss as to what we're trying to fix. But at that point, now the auditor's office has their stake in it in terms of here's what we're trying to solve. Then the department heads and basically the users of the system have the ability to push back with some level of, well, this part's broken. How do we fix that small nuance to where it makes it a smooth system? I'm not speaking here as an auditor. I'm speaking here, or a councilman, and more along the lines of somebody that fixes problems. And that's just kind of what I'm seeing is we don't have a problem definition to fix.
Well, here's the problem. And now that you brought up the auditing, so we've just closed out 2020. We still have 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024, correct? We currently have the auditor who served in 21, 22, 23, and 24, correct? He's still here for the next 4 months. And instead of us worrying about getting those 4 years cleared up with the State Board of Accounts, we've just rolled out a new system. And so I think sometimes we have to prioritize our functions when we know that we're still 4 years backlogged. And again, I'm not blaming him, I'm not blaming the previous person. I don't know why we're in the situation. That doesn't really matter. But the bottom line is, right now, we currently have an auditor who has 4 years of auditing for the time that he was there, where he has a say because he understands what he did these last 4 years. You would think that he would be looking at closing out his 4 years in office.
That may or may not be the case, and I don't mean to cut you off, but I just want to address something, is the fact that if this is something that is to address the result of the 2020 closure audit, that shortcoming is going to exist in all of the 21 through 24. So it is something that should be on a list with some level of priority to address. How we go about it.
So it's your understanding this is to fix 2020? Is that your understanding?
No,
I don't know, I'm asking.
I'm a little confused as to how we got to the system change. That's part of the question.
Most people are. That's
Yeah,
part of the
that's
issue.
where we're all lost, because again, we were working on audits and we still have 4 more years of audits to do. And now we roll out a new system 4 months before the term's gonna end. And, I wrote down some of the cons. We can only do 1 invoice at a time. And, I've got Diane here where we have 7 bills that come in from one company where we were able to put all 7 bills on 1 invoice. They stamped it, and then the commission would sign it. The commissioners of the commission would sign it, and then we could send it off. We can no longer do that.
So it would be a composite invoice. You'd have 7 attachments to 1 PO.
No,
You're only allowed 1 invoice.
No. The way that it's been.
Oh, yes.
right.
Yeah.
So we would have attached all 7 bills, and on the front page, we could list all 7 bills. So the commissioner that would have to sign, they could actually flip the page and look at all 7 bills if they wanted to. But at the front, it would list everything on 1 bill. We would send it in. And then there was the benefit of when you submitted it, when you got it back, and once it was processed, you got back a blue sheet that would actually physically tell you when that check was going to be mailed out. So now we've got a system where we have to put each bill in separately. So each bill has to be signed off on. We scan it, we put it in, and then if we want verification of when the bill's going to get paid, we physically have to go back into the computer, and then we have to look the vendors up, each vendor individually, and we have to find out when that bill's going to get paid. So am I speaking incorrectly, Diane?
According to the instructions.
Okay.
I want to shed, Joey Winsky, LaPorte County Treasurer, and former auditor. I just want to shed some light on a couple of things that have been said here. Number one, with respect to the documentation that needs to be kept, you need to keep all. It's fine. Many counties do it the way they want it done right now, with the exception that they keep all the original documentation that's kept in the auditor's office. Whether they do it like they're doing it now through the computer, or whether they do it how it was done before, that documentation needs to be kept, and that's per the State Board of Accounts. Second thing is, And if you talk to the Board of Accounts, by the way, they will tell you that the reason they want that original documentation is because sometimes when a scan comes through, it doesn't come through complete, or it could be fuzzy or something else. So that's why they want that documentation, just for that reason. Second thing, there is a state statute that does talk about how long you have to keep documentation. And if I remember correctly, you have to keep that documentation for the audit for 2 years and 45 days after the audit is completed. So you complete the audit, let's say, in September, 45 days it takes to release that audit in most cases. 45 days for the state to release the audit. Then you have to wait 2 years after that. Now, Mr. DiMartino can verify that at some point. But I have sat in 12 years of retention meetings, which have to be held every year. We usually hold them in June. And that's written. The third thing that I want to say is 2020 is closed. We can't go back and correct 2020. The auditor, the chief deputy auditor, my chief deputy, and myself sat in a meeting with the State Board of Accounts probably within the last 6 weeks, and they told us we have to move forward. They gave both of us a list of things that have to be posted and corrected, but we cannot go back to 2020. 2020 is dead. So, Adam, if you have a question about that, just forget about that because 2020 is done. Yep. We're moving forward now with 2021. The auditors were here today. I spoke with them last week. I spoke with them this week, and we're moving forward with 2021. You have any questions? I'm here to try to answer them.
I do have a brief one just for the audit's sake. We're still waiting, or what are the years, the last period or years that the cash is balanced for the SBOA so that they can move forward? Are we ready to go with 22 and 23 once?
We've been ready with 21, 22, 23. We probably have about 6 more weeks.
6 weeks.
Not 6 weeks to do it. 6 weeks left in that year. We probably have maybe, I'm going to say 3 weeks at the most, and then we'll be current.
Okay.
Then we'll move into 2024, and by the time they're ready to do their annual audit in 2025, we'll be ready.
All right. So there's nothing left for, other than that, there's nothing left for anybody else in the county to do, your office or the auditor's office or anyone else's, right?
Right. Okay. We're, and let me reiterate one more time how this whole thing started. The previous treasurer did not record $5 million as she should have. There's an investment section in the Lao system, and she should have had them all listed in there. Was never there. By the time I got here and we started reconciling at that time, during my term, the Board of Accounts came in and pulled those. They said, we haven't, the previous treasurer hasn't reconciled the cash book or the banks correctly. Therefore, you have to go back to 2019 and start in 2019 and go forward. And I'm very proud to say that we have done a stellar job doing that. I have worked with my staff. There are 5 of us who work on that daily. And we're almost at the end of 23, and so, yeah.
Well, it sounds like we've at least got 2 answers to two of the questions so far posed tonight. It sounded like it was difficult to hear the chief deputy, but it did sound like she said no records are being destroyed and we're keeping them. That's what it sounded like. Hopefully that's the case. I mean, we can find that out later.
Hopefully it is, but I've had
and the
questions in my office. Mm-hmm. What do we do with the original documentation? And several department heads have said, well, we were told that we can destroy them after we scan them in. Which brings me to another point, is that very few of us have scanners. So what's happening is, if you scan them, you're scanning them into your hard drive, and we are all on small hard drives now. We don't have the big towers that we used to have, and we don't have the backups that we used to have. So if number one, God forbid, we should ever have another cyber attack, we may lose all that documentation, and that's another reason to keep the original documents. The second thing is that, a hard drive only has so much storage in there. When you scan it in, unless you change the name, it just says scan 7/26/24. So you got to be savvy enough to change that name to whatever it is.
Yeah.
And like I said, not many of us have scanners. So if this is what we're going to go to, which is not my call, but it's not, I don't care what we do. We'll do whatever we have to. But then we're going to be coming to the council to say, we need a new software program for scanning, and we need scanners. So then how do you justify that cost?
Sure. Just a quick point on the IT policy. Any of this stuff shouldn't be, you can save it to your local hard drive, but it should first and foremost be being saved up into the cloud. So all those records are maintained offsite and backed up, because unless it's something trivial for your hard drive, the hard drives are really irrelevant for storage purposes for our day-to-day
That's a question for IT, like you just said. So
that is the IT policy. It should be saved to the cloud, not saved locally on your hard drive.
Well,
I do have a question. Is the LAO system actually saving the information on their servers also, or is that a local client?
LAO saves LAO's information. It doesn't save anybody else's.
So even though they're putting this information up to LAO, it's not being saved on LAO servers?
Well, these are the questions that should have all been discussed and worked out before they implemented all this. These are the things that they should have came to us and said, we have a program that we'd like to implement, and let's all figure out how this is going to work, so that everybody knew, instead of us having a workshop now after the fact and not knowing. So now, mind you, there are still departments. So there were departments that had to rush out and go buy scanners because they did not have scanners. We still have departments that are not on this system, that they are physically still bringing their stuff to the auditor's office and having to have them downloaded. And where is the fairness when they're doing it for select departments, but not all departments can do it?
Well, my question would be, how are they buying those scanners? Because we have never had 400 accounts. You can ask the council members. They've taken that away from us long, long ago. So if you have how many?
22 years ago.
22 years ago. So if you want to buy a scanner, it's not in your budget. A scanner is a 400 account.
So again, there's been provisions made for certain departments to go ahead and buy scanners.
That, but
I can tell you for sure, yes. What account they paid for it out of, how they did it, we have no idea, because again, that big word transparency that they talk about all the time, that certain people run around and talk about transparency, there was absolutely no transparency for this.
It's on the system. It's on LAO system. What happened?
Hi, everybody. I by all means not afraid of new technology changes, and especially for things that make it for the better for the county to work better. What it scares me is that in our industry, outside of government, it's the ISO world. NIPSCO's got ISO. I think with the hospitals have ISO.
Yeah.
The school system has ISO. Adam, you told me you guys do too. It's a 7-year retention paper act minimum. There's other rules go up higher depending on the severity of the paperwork coming to us. I have gone through audits as much as you guys have through county governments. I've gone through the same audits. There's 7 different ISOs that we have at the steel mills, for example, i.e. for the steel mills. I know there's at least 3 or 4 of them for the hospitals. So I don't have a problem with this, but I think we just jumped too soon, too quick. And we need to understand, again, maybe with the commissioners, with a policy that's written out for record retention. I surely don't, I'm not comfortable with 2 years past some date of something else. That we have solid dates, it's 7, 10, and 15 years. And again, anybody that's in the industry, we don't violate those rules. I get audited and there's a whole different rule about this. We don't sell steel, or you don't do hospital stuff, or you guys don't do NIPSCO stuff without an ISO audit. So I think we just went too quick, too fast. I have no problem with the idea, but we have to find out where the storage is going to be and how long. These numbers here that have been thrown out are not enough in my mind, but thank you.
Getting hard to get up and down. So I just want to, Randy Novak, Council. I spoke with the State Board of Accounts this morning. State Board of Accounts said that the records need to be maintained and not destroyed. And as somebody else stated, a department head came to me and said that they were told scan them in, and then once you scan them and you send it, you can get rid of them. And to me, I think that's an issue. So I'm not opposed to any of the scanning, sending it, more technology, the better, but I believe that it violates or needs to be taken care of so that we're retaining those records and everything's being done to follow the state statute with that. The other thing that the State Board of Accounts said is that when they come and do an audit, they're not going to go to, let's say, EMS, 911, or juvenile center to look up the records. They're going to come to the auditor's office. So they implied, and I believe they actually said it, was that they're fine with them scanning and sending them, but then they want a hard copy sent so that they can retain those records also. So with that,
So then it would be the auditor maintaining all the originals?
What I got from it is they're gonna give the auditor's office a list.
Correct.
And the auditor's office will have to retrieve the information.
get those documents,
Yes.
whether they keep them on site or they keep them somewhere else.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, Diane is sitting right here, and she assisted a lot in looking for those records. So again, it's very time consuming on our assistant. And so I'd like to have a clear policy or a record, because our employee gets pulled to do a lot of this work. And it's really unfair, because it seems just like more and more work is getting pushed onto her. And it's always, and the old saying, the one who knows the most is the one that ends up doing. The ones who do the work are the ones who get more and more work. But at some point, we have to step back and say, we have to come up with a system where it's not always being drained on one individual.
Right. When I actually spoke to the auditor's office on Friday, trying to, they called about some issues and we talked about this. And I explained to him my issue is the record retention and what the state statute says, what we have to comply with. And I was told that it's their understanding that each department could determine their own retention. So in other words, if you were EMS, you could say, okay, we're going to scan ours and that's our retention. You're going to say, I'm going to keep mine hard copies, and everybody can do it differently. That is, I have a problem with that. I think we need to, one, go to legal and get an opinion, and whatever that is, we need to follow it so that it's safe and it's secure and we do it the right way, instead of, and the State Board of Accounts also, we talked to them this morning, they're like, you need to have one system and you need to maintain records and keep copies of it. They absolutely said, do not destroy documents because you need the redundancy. So, and that's my thing. I'm all for the scanning, making things more better. It's just there. I think there's a few things that could have been tweaked to make it easier or better. And you know, with 99% of the things in this county, communication, if there was communication of this is what we're doing, this is how we're doing it, it could open the dialogue so everybody could have talked a little bit better and we wouldn't be standing here today. So, thanks.
I got an answer to about Lao. Lao retains all of the files that are uploaded currently for 30 days. After 30 days, everything is archived. So they are retaining those records. So that's just to answer that question. Okay? I'm not going to discuss rollout. It's already been mentioned. Could have been better. And I'm going to leave it there. Thank you.
But we do, I mean, I know you don't want to get into this, but I have concerns because you coming in as the new auditor, I mean, we have to clear out these audits from these last 4 years. We just rolled out a new system. We really don't know. I mean, like, and honestly, here's the email that was sent to my department. It was sent from the accounts payable person directly to the assistant. Not one commissioner was on this. Hi Diane, accounts payable is moving to remote claims and we have picked you to be the next department that is blessed with this new process. And 3 big smiley faces. This way, we will keep all documentation in the financial system for when State Board of Accounts comes knocking on the door to audit. Laugh out loud. Attached are instructions, question and answer for remote claims. Please complete any further POs using this new process. Along with it came a 7-page instructional center. This came not from the auditor, not from the chief auditor. This came from a payroll clerk directly to the department person who does the claims.
Not payroll.
So, and this isn't the only one. And I'm only using mine for an example. And you're right, it's not how it should have been rolled out. We need you to look into figuring out what the retention, I know that the state has retention on records, and they vary depending on what type of record it is. So I mean, now we're gonna have to go back and we're gonna have to quickly do some homework because they rolled this out for our department back August 7th.
So I don't see that an issue, and I don't see retention electronically an issue because some of these records need to be held on to 10 years after receipt of the State Board of Accounts. So, but so that doesn't necessarily mean that we need to keep the paper records for 10 years, but we want to go through the process for a number of years and keep the paper records redundancy so it keeps on going, and then you can destroy the paper records sooner. You know what I'm saying? But you just can't go ahead and have a department head today scan in their information and shred that record. That's not a good idea. But yes, we'll take a look at this.
Okay. So moving on to the next thing.
Can I add one thing to the process? What the auditor's office has failed to share with everybody is that there is an internal control advantage of the way the system partially works, and that is that in order for it to be processed, it has to be approved. Otherwise, nothing can be paid. It won't go forward. So that means somebody is actually looking at it. It doesn't say that somebody's reviewing it. If somebody just presses the button, doesn't look at it, then it's for naught. But there is the opportunity to actually review everything. And my understanding so far that, in certain situations has definitely been reviewed, but I can't say, I'm just going to say that there's that opportunity in there. So I'm not saying this is a bad thing. I'm going to, I'm reluctant to share my next concern, but it's got to do with this system no longer uses purchase orders. Purchase orders are, my understanding, most counties have done away with them. And I understand for most counties that might be practical and possible. However, I'm also familiar of something called Yellow Book, which is the government accounting standards, auditing standards. And in there, they always refer to, and maybe things have changed because I have not conducted a government audit in a while. However, the schools still use them, and the schools get government funds. And so federal funds, that is. And I know that our county also receives some federal funds. So that's something else that I would have wanted to check in if I had more time. I'm not saying that it's a bad thing right now. I always like to have a control number, or think that in all the years that we've had control numbers, that might be the process, because I don't know how to follow and everything that's being put into the system unless I go back by date. And even then, sometimes things aren't entered timely. So how do you know that an invoice came in? And if a department, somebody was on vacation, the invoice says August 7th, but they didn't get to input it until August 21st, it starts creating a difference. So I can't speak on that, but I'm just saying it just leads to more complications than what it necessarily should be. Where if there was a purchase order, there was a way to put a purchase order in. And I have spoken with the owner of Lao, and we have not gone into deep discussion on it. It's something that I would seriously consider and think about. But, you know, the auditors group, certainly current auditors group, should have taken into further consideration in with talking not just to software people but to professionals. And being one, and even though I'm the, we'll just say, claimed with no opponent, I will be the next auditor, to try and throw this in at this time of the year. People may object to it. It may not be terrible to iron out the kinks, but the problem is that I have no opportunity, because you can tell every time I spoke, someone was shouting over me when they didn't like what they heard. And that's not a way to communicate. It has not been, and that's the way somebody's been communicating with me for more than a year and a half. And it's totally inappropriate. If they want their say, they can wait for their say and do it then. That's being a professional. That's all I have for now. Thank you.
I just have one quick question. Right now, when the commissioners approve the claims, are you reviewing them online, electronically? Or do you have a packet? I'm just asking.
So normally we get a packet, and we have to go through the packet and all the dockets.
But now they're electronic?
So we don't have access, because again, we would have to do the same thing. We would have to go into the system.
How is it presented for you guys to pay?
So what we get is a claims docket, which is
Line items.
basically line items.
But you
So
don't
it's
get
literally
all the supporting document with it?
no.
Okay,
No.
That's what I was just asking.
Yeah.
Because the last thing I wanted to see was they scan all the documents, they send it over, and then they print all the documents and give them to you to sign with the supporting document.
No,
All right, that's what I want to make sure.
The documents that Commissioner Grammarosa was talking about were items that come directly into the commissioner's office.
Right.
Yeah, and those are,
Yep.
yeah, and as department heads,
All right.
we sign off on them.
So the next thing I think that we need to talk about is the loss that we occurred, again, for transparency to the public. Couple months ago, we had a bad actor contact the auditor's office, and the auditor's office, instead of contacting the department for which the vendor worked with, they decided to go ahead and work with this bad actor online and start making transfers. The first transfer was for $2,995 and some odd cents, and we lost that money. That's money that could have been used in the highway department to actually pave roads, fill potholes, and that money is lost. And then the second transfer that was made was for $2.4 million.
Twice. Thankfully, Joey, thank you for your diligence and your experience to catch that and stop it before we lost $2.4 million. That was not only sent out once, it was sent out twice. And I know we do cybersecurity training online. We all do. At least we're all supposed to. I'm not sure who actually is doing it. One of the very first basic things that they show you when you're being defrauded is your email address. And when we get an email that came to the auditor's office, here's the email address up here, and here's the other one down here, and they're spelled different. That's one of the very first basic things that somebody should recognize. But to send it out twice, thanks for Joey. And what I'm thinking now, that was community crossings. $1 million of that was state money. What's to stop the state from going, you know what, if you can't keep track of your own money, then we're just not going to do you your $1 million next year. And what I want to know, which was what we're leading up to probably, what kind of internal controls have we done since then? What have we done? I know the two people that did this, that almost had us defrauded, they're still here, they're going right along. Me, I'd have fired them that day. This is gross incompetence. What has been done in the meantime to make sure this doesn't happen again? Because the auditor's not there.
We have no idea.
And the chief deputy was one who was almost defrauded, plus somebody else from the office. What are we doing to make sure this doesn't happen again? Because this was pretty damn simple stuff. It's very, not only as a commissioner, but as a taxpayer, to see this kind of incompetence go on. And it was just like, well, that happened, yeah. Well, Joey saved it, it's okay, just move right along.
Commissioner, I understand, based on our prior conversations that, they've changed the way they intake the information, and they contact the department head, and they have some internal controls going on in the department. That's my understanding.
We haven't been made aware of that, but the other thing in the email that we got from the auditor trying to shift the blame to some other department, she mentions, oh, by the way, last year we had a check that was intercepted by a bad actor. Commissioners were never notified. Treasurer was never notified. It was swept under the carpet, and I've yet to find out how much money was that. How much money did we lose that time? Never heard about it. And it's never been addressed since then. And it was never, ever brought to the attention of the commissioners or the treasurer. Swept under the carpet. You want to talk about transparency? You want to talk about corruption? Let's talk about it.
Commissioner Mrzinski, were you at the meeting, the executive session Commissioner Grammarosa mentioned earlier about the check situation, about the Reith Riley situation?
I believe we were all there.
During that meeting, what Mr. DiMartino alluded to was some of the procedures and checks that were changed security-wise during that meeting that the auditor's office told us about. I don't think we want to go into exactly what all those changes were to help prevent anyone from. We don't want to advertise a way to circumvent our current system.
Did they send that out in email to us, or did they send a hard copy? Because I didn't get nothing.
They told it to us right here in this very room.
May I add to that? Mm-hmm. I really do appreciate you bringing that point up. When we came back for the second meeting, or the suggestions were made. I can't remember. I believe it was the first or second meeting. Don't remember exactly. Suggestions were made, and definitely Mr. Karanka spoke of his corporate experience, and he spoke about how not only should the form change, which it did, which we saw it changed, but the second part that he added was that instructions or procedures be put on the back of it so that there be things to check off. Now, it wasn't ready at any meeting or discussion or any executive session, but later on afterwards, it was, I believe, released to all of us in an email, so that whether or not there was a serious attempt to correct that situation, but these are things that people who speak that they know everything didn't have it in place. And that's when I made a comment about not understanding internal controls. That is one of the serious things that I was very concerned with. and why I ran for office. So there was a timetable on it. I do believe it's now been corrected, but practice is another thing. Thank you.
And I would agree with Mr. Rosenbaum. There's the whole issue. I mean, if a form was changed, where is the checks and balances to make sure that it is being implemented? How do we know that these internal controls are actually have been changed and that we're not going to end up in this situation?
I want to correct myself. I don't believe I have an email on it. I just remember getting handed it at one of the meetings, so it had to be at the second meeting that it was in. But no, there were two separate pages.
We never seen the final version of it.
But, so we have not seen the final version, but we knew that there was a second version with that information on it.
So again, no
don't have
accountability
further detail. I
to,
thought it was.
so again, no accountability to the commission or to the council. And when we get audited, we all get pulled into these audits. It's a real unfortunate situation, and I understand that we probably can't do anything to prevent the next 4 months and what's going to happen in the next 4 months. The idea that money was lost, and then we have a lot of folks who are always very quick for transparency. They send out press releases about other department heads and, you know, who they want in certain positions, but yet this has been months. This happened back in June, and until we had this meeting so that we could actually let the public know about these loss, no one has said a thing. All the ones that hoot and howl about transparency have kind of sat silent and hoping that this would just go away, and I believe the public does need to know. I mean, close to $3,000 was absolutely lost. There's been no plan of replacing that department with the money that the auditor lost for that department. And we are very fortunate that we were able to get the $2.4 million back. But the reality was that was transferred. It was transferred out of our county, and the treasurer, Joey Winsky, had received a phone call. Would you like to come up and talk about it? Or you want to tell us how the process worked? Because again, I believe we're very fortunate that the treasurer stepped in when she did, and she stopped what happened, and we were on pins and needles for a couple days.
More than pins and needles. It's a lot of money. What happened was I had been over in the as we call it, the red courthouse. And I came back, and my chief deputy and I were talking about some things that happened in the office, and I got a phone call from, I believe her name is Ashley, at an Oklahoma bank, and she said to me, I think I have a fraudulent check that came from you. And I said, why do you think that? And she said, because the person's name on the check, the company's name on the check, does not have, they have a new account here. It's not a seasoned old account. And I know that this is a big company, so if you could, I'd like you to check on that and make sure that it's not legitimate. And she said, I need an answer quickly. And she said, I want to have you stop the check and reverse the check if it's possible. So I said, okay, give me 10 minutes. And so Amy and I went to work. And I said to Amy, I want you to go upstairs to the auditor. I want all the documentation that we have for this check. And she came down with emails, and the emails told the story. I said to her, did anybody contact Charity? Because this was a check that came from the highway department, and it was written to Reith Riley. And they told me no, nobody had checked with Charity. I called Charity, and Charity I said, do you know, and I can't remember the guy's name, I think it was Mike something, but I don't know. Anyway, what happened is that Tabitha, never mind. Anyway, she got an email from somebody who said they were the CEO or CFO of Reith Riley. And they said, we want to change all of our information in your system. And by the way, do we have any outstanding invoices? Well, that was a red flag to me. I said to Charity, who do you deal with at Reith Riley? And she told me a woman's name, and it's right here in LaPorte. And I said, can you check with her and make sure that this is, legitimate? And she goes, we have never sent a check that big. We always hand deliver it. Okay. So Rhonda got involved. Like I said, there was another person involved. And I stopped the check myself. I called her back and I said, please reverse that. We called Horizon Bank. We got them online so that they knew what to do. And the bad part is if this Ashley from the Oklahoma Bank would have talked to Rhonda, would have talked to the other person in her office, would have even talked to my chief deputy, and I'm not trying to throw any of them under the bus, especially Amy, because Amy works very hard at legitimizing all of these checks when she sends them out. But I guess it's going to sound a little egotistical, but it's because of my experience that I questioned this, and that I knew to call the highway department first, and then call back why this was sent. Where did they get all the information to send it out? Any of the other people involved probably would have said, oh yeah, that was an ACH, I sent it out this day, and we should be good with that. Sure, yeah, that's good, go ahead. And we would have been out $2.4 million. But because I have been through so many in my 8 years as auditor and 4 years as treasurer, so many things that, a lot of them have been fraudulent, or I don't know if you could say illegal or not, but we've had missing money in the auditor's office when I was there from the previous auditor, not from my administration. We had many previous checks that were fraudulent. We've had embezzlement in different departments. And I was there through all of this, and it was either me or my former chief deputies that caught these things, or my staff in some cases. So I'm going to pat myself on the back for this, because I really feel like if somebody would have answered it, we would have been gone. Would have been gone. And when we recalled the 2.4 million, they told me then that they could not get the $2,995.38, by the way, back. That was gone. And they said that a lot of times these bad actors do a test run, and that was probably their test run. So I'm just happy that we got the money back.
And we appreciate it.
When you say if has anything been done to anything put in place to assure that this doesn't happen again, I now have all the dockets sent to me, and I also, besides you guys, I go through every single one. I look them up in their budgets. I make sure that if I have a question about something, I ask. And we will not send out, especially the electronic checks, until we have the answers. I sign every one, by the way, so that the State Board of Accounts has documentation that I have looked at them. So,
Thank you. We do appreciate all the work you've done.
thank you.
And I think the last thing that we need to talk about, and I think that this is something that the council doesn't, a lot of council probably doesn't even know yet. And this is an inaccuracy in the auditor's office, and we're going through it right now. We have a situation where we have employees that are paid through grants, and when they're paid through grants, their benefits are supposed to be paid for through the grants as well. And unfortunately, they've been taking the money from the commissioners' funds. They're aware that it has happened. They have not contacted any commissioner yet, unless you know, Mr. Haney, about this. Are you aware of it?
It's the first I'm hearing of it.
Okay. Mr. Mrzinski? And so it's my understanding that they're just going to do a reversal and put the money back into our account. And so, again, I don't know what we can do from now to the end of the year, but for transparency, I think that we need to have this out there. When we can't get balances on a lot of our accounts, and then we have these situations where they're taking money out of our accounts and they're just taking it out, putting it back in. We're not even aware. It just happens that you happen to look at the balance and you know that it doesn't match up from the last month that they had taken out, and you realize that there's something wrong with the accounts is when you realize that something is happening. There's no accountability for this. I don't know if this is being done intentionally just to create a mess from now to the end of the year, or I hope this isn't malicious and that this is just the fact of inexperience. But we're gonna inherit a mess. I mean, the commissioners too have had another situation where they've taken our accounts and they've renamed them. Didn't ask again, I don't know if that falls on the commissioners or if that falls on the financial body, but the financial body needs to know that these things are happening. And I've watched your meetings, I come to a lot of your meetings, and I never, when I am put on the agenda, regardless of whether I'm the one that's been asked to be put on the agenda or not, I'll show up and I'll say, hey, I didn't ask to be put on the agenda. I've never seen permission asked by the financial body to change our account names. And I think for transparency, all this information needs to be out there. Is there anything else anyone else would like to add? Hearing nothing, I'd like to adjourn the workshop. Thank you all for coming.